Hello everyone, I'm Brian. Today I'm writing to Sadhguru at Prathima Institute of Medical Science. Prathima. I hope I pronounced that right. Prathima. I think I did. Youth and Truth again. This is a long one, so I'm trying to keep my mouth shut for the most part, but this is in fact a react, so if you want to watch it without me talking, please, please, you should have already watched, by the way, before coming over here. But anyways, let's go ahead and get started because it's long.
Namaskaram. I said namaskaram. Good morning to everyone.
Namaskaram, Sadhguru. Before we begin, I'd like to thank Sounds of Isha for their wonderful reverberating music and touching our souls with their song.
I don't think they enjoyed the music.
Oh, we all do. Yes.
But nobody was on their feet, was it?
Namaskaram once again, Sadhguru. On behalf of Prathima Institute of Medical Sciences, I'd like to welcome you to our college, sir. It's indeed a privilege and a blessing to have you face to face. So your presence and your coming has rather created a big buzz all throughout our college, and we've had questions pouring in for the past couple of weeks. Yes, sir. So before we begin with our questioning, I'd like to introduce the student panel, sir. I'm Chetna from third year MBBS.
I'm Ishwar from third year MBBS.
And I'm Abhilasha from third year MBBS.
Namaskaram, sir.
You got fans out there.
Sadhguru, with your permission, if I may.
Please.
Sadhguru, coming to the first question, I'd like to draw your attention to a very recent event that took place in West Bengal, where a group of doctors were brutally beaten up by raged family members of a patient who died during his treatment. Sadhguru, how do you think we as medical students are supposed to deal with this violence against healing hands?
I mean, you know, in the medical field in the United States too, there are a lot. I've heard there are a lot of issues too. It's really sad and it's a bit worrisome, but at the same time, it's really hard to say that it just happens. I remember someone saying there's a lot of like not malpractice, but like I guess mistakes that happen in hospitals, and obviously mistakes in hospitals can cost lives. And you know, when the hospitals are overrun, when staff members are working overtime, they get tired, but they can't go home because they need them to stay because people need their help. Mistakes is going to happen, and that's a big issue. I don't know how prevalent it is. But again, she's talking about something that, you know, doctors went over there and, you know, I guess that because of what they did, the patient died. And I mean, you know, I don't know whether it's because of the doctor's fault or whether the patient was going to die anyway. But, you know, this is kind of a hard one, honestly. We have to understand, obviously, that doctors and nurses want to make sure they're 100%, that they're not making mistakes or too many mistakes. The reason why being, I don't think it's right to fire a doctor or a nurse if they made one mistake. You're going to be firing everyone at that point because everyone does make a mistake outside of the medical field and inside. Of course, you want them to be perfect, but guess what? We're all human beings, they can't be perfect. So if you start firing experienced doctors and nurses and replace them with inexperienced doctors and nurses, you're going to increase the mortality rate. I believe, obviously, that you should look at doctors whenever they make a mistake. Especially if they make too many mistakes in a very short period of time, then at that point, I can see them being let go. Maybe even held responsible depending on how severe the case is, whether it's intended, what do you call it, where they just didn't care for the patient. I forget what the word is. But if they make one mistake and then a few years later make another, I don't necessarily believe that should cost them their job because, again, you know, the medical field is very stressful, especially for work in ICU. Well, maybe ICU. Usually, whenever I went over there, it's relatively quiet. But of course, when stuff hits the fan, it's a saying. It's a saying. When crap hits the fan, it gets really hectic in there. But especially in the emergency room, where it's just obviously everyone's going in there for an emergency. So again, I hope this is the real message that I want people to hear. You do not want to keep firing people who make honest mistakes. Like they did not intentionally do it. Why? Because one, they have experience already in the field. And there are many more mistakes they could have made, but because of their experience, they did not make those mistakes. If you start firing people because of honest mistakes, then you're going to keep constantly getting new people who have no experience, which increases the chance of making more mistakes. That's the real message I really want to send out here. Trust me, I mean, it's easier said than done. Absolutely. Again, everything is easier said than done. And then whenever it directly affects you, it's going to be so much harder not to want that person to pay, generally speaking. Now, obviously, I know some people who, they see their doctors doing something and the patient dies, and it's not because of the doctor's fault. But some people still do blame the doctors for the patient dying, even though the doctors could not do anything about it. But anyways, you got my point.
Well, in Bengal, everybody gets beaten. Not just the doctors. Every day you're hearing it all over the place. Just about everybody gets beaten. Because unfortunately, we have created a culture of violence. Everything is settled this way. There are many reasons, these are political stuff, I don't think it's relevant to go into that here, but this is very important for all of us, that we create a culture of peace. When I say a culture of peace, every transaction that human beings have, somebody gains, somebody loses. Yes or no? In every transaction, whether it's within the family, in the community, in the larger situations in the country or among nations, whatever you do, always someone loses, someone gains a little bit. How to go through these transactions without making them frictious or conflict? This has to come within every one of us, that when I lose, I don't want to beat you. I have some other way of settling it. This doesn't mean I will simply lose. No, there are other ways to fight. There are other ways to fight than getting physical with you, isn't it? So, this culture of peace will not come just like that. This culture of peace needs to be… it's a generational work. It's not like one day slogan you all shout and go back home. That's not going to work. It's a generational work. It's about how we bring up our children, it's about how we behave on the street, how we interact with each other. On all levels, we create a culture of peace.
And this is something also I've told one of my political friends, is that you can make things illegal all you want. It's not going to change the culture of the people. The people are going to be using that as an excuse. See, they're trying to enforce their power on us. They're trying to do this and that, and they're proving my point that they're trying to be whatever. And I do believe, in order to create peace in the world, it's going to be it's the absolute most difficult thing to do, which is to let our children play with each other and see that whatever this negativity towards the other is false. How can you say that these group of people is terrible when your best friend is one of them? And hopefully these children will be confused, but that's a good thing, because it's like, why is my best friend a terrible human being when he's my freaking best friend? And you just hope that they go in the right direction, thinking that no, them being terrible people is not what I see, that's all a lie, and they change. There's going to be some people who will take that to heart because their parents said it, and then start being manipulative and being a bad person. But it's really the hardest way to put an end to any type of, you could say, violence in a sense, but hatred also. It is the most difficult. It's the slowest but it's a permanent result. Again, this is the reason why I like Daryl Davis. He is a black man that goes into the KKK, people who absolutely hate black people, and he converted a lot of them to become his friends and to give up being KKK members. They literally handed him, said, I guess they all have some type of outfits, but they handed him their outfit as a way of saying, hey, I no longer want to be, part of this hate group, and you opened up my eyes. Well, that is what I like to say is this group is like a Hydra head. Like if you think about Hercules' one of his labors. I don't know if you know the labor, but he's supposed to slay a Hydra. But every time he cuts off the head of a Hydra, two grows in its place. And the cutting off the head is like laws, where if you keep enforcing more laws against them, you're going to create so many Hydras because more people are saying, see what they're trying to do to us, see what they're trying to do, they hate us, they don't like us, they're creating all these laws against us. Whereas in the mythology, I believe, there's two different versions of Hercules, the mythology. One, he uses a club which doesn't cut off the head but kills the head. Or in the other mythology where he cuts off the head and then burns it with fire to cauterize it so a head can't grow back. But that's like what Daryl Davis did, where all those people that turned in their uniform, let's just say that, they no longer, them and their children, hopefully no longer becomes the extra heads of the Hydra. So there's ways about doing stuff that is very painful, and because obviously, just cutting off the head of a Hydra is super easy. Well, to superheroes and stuff, but then to have to cut off the head and then to cauterize that head, significantly more difficult, but it's a permanent solution. It's not always going to work. You can cut off the head and you might miss cauterizing it. Again, just trying to put up some examples there where maybe you got the father but the son's too much into it, but at least it's a permanent death of at least one head.
As a part of this, because this is the 150th anniversary of Mahatma's birth anniversary, I am also part of the 20-member committee chaired by the Prime Minister for this purpose. As a part of this, we are doing various other things, but one aspect of it is about culture of peace. So we are doing major events in the world with top celebrities. The idea of bringing the celebrities in is so that the world's eyeballs will come to it. People should understand there is a way of dealing with things peacefully. Mahatma is a representative of this, that he found peaceful solutions for very violent problems. Not only in India, using his inspiration, Nelson Mandela in South Africa, Martin Luther King in United States, the entire movement there, very violent problems, but peaceful solutions were found. This is important if all of us want to exist. Why I'm saying this is, there was a time when the only weapon we could pick up was a stick. The stick became a sword, the sword became an arrow became a gun has become a bomb has become a super kind of bomb. Once this kind of destructive capabilities we have, it's extremely important that we have a culture of peace within us, because it's not just going to be a broken bone. I don't know how you got it. If you took a stick, it would be just a broken bone. Took a sword, just one man died. But if we took a nuclear bomb, now entire civilizations can go. So this has become extremely important now, that there is a culture of peace within me and around me. This is not going to come with slogans, this is not going to come with politics. This is a generational work that all of us need to work for, that we bring this into our lives, no matter what is the loss that we go through. We learn to conduct it in a certain way.
The reason why I was shaking my head there was because this is something that is desperately needed. I mean, you can look in the United States during the 2020, there was some good protests out there for sure. but then there were many others, or at least the loud ones, as they say, meaning that the one that always gets news coverage, that's always being in the spotlight because of how violent it was, while the peaceful protests were never covered in the news. But that's the thing, though, is that, oh, it's like, well, I heard some people say, well, in order to recognize, you have to be violent. It's like, no, I think that if there's protests going on, and then there's violent protests, the news is going to cover the violent protests over the normal protests. But if only the normal protest is going on, they might cover that. But, yeah, I mean, think about what happened during 2020, and then think about, needing inner peace, and then finding non-violent ways to solve the problems. I mean, I say this, and then you look at, No Oil, or whatever they're called, Stop Oil, in the UK, or in Europe, I guess. I mean, they're technically doing non-violent, for sure, but I think there's just better ways. Like, me personally, I believe these people need to get a job in the fields to help reduce or to completely eliminate oil entirely. If they spent as much time protesting as trying to discover alternatives to oil, I think they would make ourselves would progress a lot further in trying to stop oil usage. But at the moment, it is so difficult. We're so dependent on it because everything, in a sense, runs off of it.
See, whenever something happens to us that we think is injustice, we want to beat somebody. This is very important, that you learn to swallow injustice and work for justice. You don't try to fix injustice right there on the street. It's happening. So, where the traffic is going in the country, just now I came from Hyderabad, the way it is going in our cities, if you don't hit anybody today, it's an accident. Hello?
Okay,
Yes or no?
I just got it.
That's the way it's going on. But if as much as your car touches somebody or your motorcycle touches somebody, right there they get down and start thrashing each other. Because they're disappointed nobody got injured in the accident. Now they want to do that. How did this happen? Don't tell me, it's okay. So, to bring a culture of peace is not one day's work. All of us need to work upon that. First of all, we should know how to be peaceful. Peace means many things to many people because you're medical students and doctors. You know that human experience has a chemical basis to it. So what you call as peace is a certain kind of chemistry. What you call as joy is another kind of chemistry. What you call as ecstasy is another kind of chemistry. Agony is one kind of chemistry, misery another kind of chemistry, stress, tension, whatever you go through are different levels of chemistry. Now, this human body is the most sophisticated and complex chemical factory on the planet. Do you agree with me? Only problem is you're a lousy manager. Hello? You're a lousy manager, it just boom, boom, it goes inside.
Boom,
The bomb
boom.
is not outside, the bomb is inside. Outside bomb is only a further facilitation of the bombs that explode inside, isn't it? You're watching movies where everything is settled violently. Your heroes are always bashing people, isn't it? Hello? So if you like that…
Real quick with that one. Well, yes, what he says is true that our heroes are bashing people, but it's not because they initially started it, though. I mean, I'm not justifying anything. I'm merely stating the fact that, obviously something happened to them, violence happened to them in order for them to use violence to try to stop it. Just a little bit of something there.
And if you think that's the best way to do it, that's the way you will do it. What I hit with my hand, when I think I've lost something big, I will also bomb you, isn't it so? Hello? If all I have is my hands, I will use it. If I have a gun, I'll use it. If I have a bomb, I will use it. Every 2 months at least you're hearing from United States, somebody walks into your school and shoots all the children. Hello? You're hearing this, isn't it? Repeatedly, universities, schools, because they have access to guns. People think it's an American phenomena. No, no, no. In India, if people had access to guns, they would have shot each other everywhere. Yes or no? There is no gun, so they're slapping each other, or some people are more equipped, they're stabbing each other, all right? So please understand this, the violence is not in the society, the violence is within us. What have we done about that?
And this is very true. I believe I've heard that. I mean, we're not. I don't remember how high we rank in terms of like gun violence. I think with all totality, I generally don't know. I think maybe top 10. But I've heard that if you remove like gang violence, specifically gang violence, it would drop down a lot. Or if you remove suicide, it'll drop down a lot. Because there's a lot of suicide in the United States as well through guns. So I don't know. I know they count that as still gun violence, I believe. So if you remove suicide or just gang violence, America will drop down significantly. So to say that, you know, it's happening every day in the United States, you got to also think of a few things. The best way to really think about it is genuinely is per capita. Meaning that per 1,000, because the United States is like the third or fourth most populous country, so you're going to have a lot of it. And I know India is like number 1 or number 2 now, I don't know which one. It's between you and China, between China and India. But, I mean, luckily enough, I guess, luckily enough, I'm not sure if that's really saying luckily enough, is that India doesn't have guns. I don't know what the rules are over there. But America was a little bit, well, I guess... America is a little bit different. They solve things with violence, don't they? Because the American Revolution, when they fought against the British, they did that violently. The Civil War to free the slaves, they did that violently. Maybe there is a little bit something going on there. Maybe. But, I mean, as far as in terms of gun violence, it's not really that high. And it's not all too common. Although... you know, media is going to portray everything, of course, especially negative stuff. Has there been like a bump in like this type of violence? Yes, there was for sure, absolutely, no doubt. But it's still pretty rare or uncommon. Let me say uncommon. Nonetheless, doesn't make it okay. It's definitely what, like Sadhguru is saying, we definitely need to look within us to, you know, not freaking continue this violent outburst between people and political parties and everything. I mean, when you just have a lot of people, violence is going to happen, and they're going to use whatever weapons they have. I look at the UK right now, actually, because I get random feeds. In the UK, there's mass stabbings. And people are wanting to ban knives. Like, guns are banned over there, now they're wanting to ban knives. The biggest thing here is that, you know, a lot of people don't think their government would go corrupt. Excuse me. But this is something that obviously America has dealt with. And I'm sure most other countries have. But I guess, I don't know if other countries done the same thing or not. But obviously, because of what Britain has done to the Americas at the time, they feel that they need to ensure that their populace, should the government ever become tyrannical, that they can have a chance of fighting back. That being the absolute most important thing. But also at the same time, you being able to defend yourself. Because criminals are not... criminals are criminals for a reason. They don't follow the laws. They're not going to sit there and say, oh, they banned guns, I guess I can't use guns. Good thing they didn't ban murder, because otherwise I'd be doing that too. I mean, if they did that, then I guess I couldn't murder anyone. So... obviously, criminals will not follow the law. So all the law really does is generally speaking, is to hinder abiding citizens. But at the same time, you can make the argument that everyone's abiding citizens until they're not, which is absolutely true. But what do you want to do? Do you want to just keep banning everything until we have nothing, and then the criminals will still do what they want to do? You know, I don't know. What is the right answer?
This is what inner engineering means. that you engineer yourself the way you want to be. Nobody can take you where they want. If somebody else can decide what should happen within you right now, you're an absolute slave, isn't it? Hello? Hello? You don't like it? See, if I decide how you should dress, how you should sit, what you should eat, you'll say this is slavery, isn't it? But if I decide right now whether you can be happy or unhappy, peaceful or violent within yourself, if I'm going to decide this, are you not in slavery? Worst kind of slavery, isn't it? That what happens within you, I will decide. This is what you're allowing in your life. You're allowing this to happen to you, that somebody can decide what happens within you. If you don't take charge of this, you will live a life of a slave. When you live a life of a slave, you will always feel life is unjust to you. When you feel it's unjust, violence is a natural consequence of that. This happened. Can I tell you a little story? No? Okay. Because some of you are shaking your head like this, maybe it's a different society. I'm seeking your permission because for most people, the moment you say once upon a time, they think it's bedtime. Especially in the last rows, the lighting is correct.
Yeah.
A yogi was walking by. What's this village? What's the local village? Huh? Chuppadani. Huh? Nagaluru. Oh, Nagatara andru? Nagaluru. A yogi was passing by in your Nagaluru. A few people gathered and abused him in every possible way they can abuse him. He listened to all the abuse very attentively, not ignoring them, very attentively. Then he said, I have an event in Prathima college. In the evening, I'll come the same way. If you have something more to say, you can tell me at that time. These are the kind of people, they will say 100 things. If you say one thing, they will beat you. They're just waiting for that. But he said, he heard all the worst kind of abuse, and then he said, in the evening I'll come back if you're ready for more. Now what do you do with this man? Because this man is like this not because he's a coward. He's like this because he's decided how to be in his life. He's decided he lives peacefully and joyfully. You pull him whichever way you want, he won't come your way, he'll go only where he wants to go. An intelligent man or no? Huh? Just you must look at yourself and see. Anybody can drag you whichever way they want, isn't it? One word, just one word, they can drag you.
And this is actually what I've also said too, is that, you know, if there is a word that can make you that can make you feel a certain way, a way that you do not want to feel, you are a slave to that word. I've said that a few times before, and I'm glad that Sadhguru thinks the same way, or I think the same way as Sadhguru. I mean, it's an easy thing to kind of, well, I won't say it's easy. It's a thing that you can even come up on your own, honestly. You just have to really think about it. And it's something, like I said, my brain just thinks about a lot of stuff. Most of it useless. Well, not lately. Most of it's been pretty good. It's not like just firing off random stuff. But most of it's been pretty good, and it's a lot of thinking about just about things, life in general, things I gotta do. So it's pretty good when you start just contemplating stuff. You start really thinking about things. So, and I mean, this is kind of like, well, I wouldn't say meditation. I wouldn't say it's even jnana yoga either. I don't know what you'd call this. I guess a bit of a self-reflection, or not really self-reflection either, but that could be part of it too, obviously, to reflect on what you have done for the day and see what got you triggered. and to just think about, I guess for me, like I think about a lot of things, like I said, like why do people get upset when certain things are said but some people are not, obviously that means it's a little bit more personal for them, but if it's not directed at them, why are they upset? So it becomes that you start to think like they're a slave to that word, or even if you direct it at them, and but the thing is, so is that they, like Sadhguru said, and like I've thought of before, is the fact that you have control over your body. You may not think you have absolute control over your body, which is can be fair, but you still have control over your body.
This, this freedom, every human being, especially the youth of this country, must earn, that nobody can decide how you are within yourself and what you will do with your life. You decide. Otherwise, you will live a life of a slave. When you live like a slave, at some point your frustration will burst out as violence. So it doesn't just happen to the doctors, it just happens to everybody. It's happening to all kinds of people every day, isn't it?
I guess he kind of gave a solution, but I'm wondering if maybe another solution is this too. But I don't know. I mean, it's kind of weird to say this, but you could go up to them and say, hey, look, we're here to help you guys, but if you don't want our help, we'll leave. Because there is a saying, you can't help someone who doesn't want help. So that's something that you could at least do for them. I don't know. Like, I understand like doctors have the Hippocratic Oath, or maybe some doctors just has this thing that they need to help people. I get it, but you have to come to realization that if a person does not want help, there are other people out in the world that need your help and are willing to have your help. Help those who want help, because you can help them a lot quicker and recover faster and move on to the next person to help. Whereas you may be struggling with one person. I mean, it's really sad to say, like, especially if you think that person is going to, and then you really want to help them out as much as possible and don't want to give up on them. That's a different scenario, though. But it's more along the lines, the people who are not quite in that situation, or not in that situation, they're just refusing or getting upset. That's a bit of a different story, too. So you have to judge for yourself whether this is something worth continuing help on, or whether you should just end it and move on to someone else who actually wants help.
Sadhguru, the heartbeat bill that has recently been declared in the US, it declares that any woman who aborts anything with a heartbeat, she is declared a criminal immediately.
I didn't understand.
The heartbeat law…
I don't think her microphone is…
No, it's fine.
Yeah.
The heartbeat law states that any woman who kills or aborts anything with a heartbeat, she immediately is declared a criminal. And this is a law in a developed country like US. And obviously, there are certain cases where we see pregnancy brought about by rape, pregnancy in teens, and also pregnancy with fetal anomalies. So, and they are still forced to have these children. So, do you think it is justified that a law can take away a woman's right to her own womb?
It's very interesting. This is very much a hot topic in here. I'll say this, if you're ever in any one of the situations, obviously I do believe in exceptions to the rules, but the problem is the fact that bad people will use those exceptions for the rules for their own advantages. And this is something that I've been I used to be in one part of the argument, then I moved to the other, and every time I hear arguments for both sides, my views shift slightly, because I understand both sides. Obviously I would love choice, but at the same time, are we not killing a human being? Well, a lot of people say it's a potential human being. Well, it's kind of like, I guess it's kind of like when you look at the, what is it? I guess the example would be like a larva and a butterfly. A larva is not a butterfly, so when you kill the larva, you're not killing a butterfly, are you? I mean, I guess it's the same thing, that it's still a living organism that's, alive. Regardless of whether you believe it or not, it's still genuinely a living organism, and the arguments are heard for one side's the fact that it has its own unique DNA and is developing into a human being. Whether you call it a fetus is just, for me, a stage of human development. I mean, It's still a human being and human development. You know, if we don't see fetuses as humans, then how does it become a human? It's clearly a human being developed, in my opinion. At the same time, I want to be, for those particular things or arguments, I believe in exceptions for those rules, of course. But for the R one, you definitely have to come up immediately, and you have to be able to prosecute the person. But then this kind of comes up with a little bit of a fearful thing for even men, because you could be, both parties could be doing it just fine and they're all happy and whatever. Then all of a sudden she comes to find out she's pregnant. She's going to just flip the script and say, "Oh, you R'd her," just so she can get the deed done, and then you're going to jail, even though it was consenting on both sides. And that's the kind of the problem with the laws there. The thing is, though, is that I'll say this: it's more for responsibility for the woman for sure, because she is the one that's going to get pregnant. So if the person, your partner, is not going to do what you want him to do, say like wrap it up, if you get what I'm saying, then just don't do it. You know what? Because you are the one it's going to happen to. It's not the man. So you call the shots. Absolutely, it's your body. And it's your choice whether you want to do that or not. Again, outside of the exception of those things, it is legitimately your choice. No one can force you to do something. Well, I mean, obviously there are ways, but that's the bad way. Outside of that, again, outside of the exception of that, no one can really force you to do something. If you do it, it's because you are willing. Now you say, what about, if something breaks? And that's the reason why I have a little bit of a leeway. I'm not quite fully one way or the other, and this is where the kind of the I guess the hard answer is, or where is the answer? Where is the limit? And heartbeat, brain, somewhere around there. Because, was it I believe there was a person that wants to do a year after, or even after they're born, still be able to do the deed, So that's kind of crazy. I mean, and the crazy thing is, like, what if they want to do it a day before, or just say 1 second before, they want to just... It's the worst. There has to be a line somewhere, and that's where the discussion needs to happen. Enough time so a person can make the decision, but not to the point where it becomes essentially a human being. Well, it's a human being, but at what stage of a human being, I guess. It's really weird to say that, because you're saying, okay, when can we execute a human being? Regardless of what you say, it's like, oh, it's not a human being. It's then at this point, there are racist people in the world that doesn't see another race as a human being. Does that make him right? You know what I'm saying? Then therefore you can just execute those race of people because they're not human beings. We have to define what is a human being. You say lived experiences or whatever. There are people who are born who live in... I don't know. There are certain cases, but a good case has to be presented. And that's where the hard parts come. I've heard a few discussions, but I got kind of tired, because it is, a difficult question, a difficult thing to be trying to find a line for.
See, I'm not for these kind of laws, all right? But at the same time, I want you to look at it with a little broader aspect. In this country, there have been many people who have killed their own daughters. I'm particularly saying daughters because that happens more to girls. It also happens to boys. Because the father believes, after all, you're my child, if you don't behave the way I want, I will kill you. It's happened or no? Not one or two, it's happened in quite substantial number that you cannot ignore the number, that kind of number has happened. So where does this right come? Because it is because of me you're born, so you must do what I want you to do, so I'll take your life. So similarly, it's my womb, I will do whatever I want, this will not go. At the same time, a woman has a freedom to do what she wants. But what she wants does not mean you can take it to any level of irresponsibility. There was a time when women had no means to prevent pregnancies, all right? Today there's substantial means, isn't it? So I would say, within 5, 6 or 10 weeks or 12 weeks or 14 weeks, you must terminate if you don't wish. But allowing the child to grow, I've seen cases, I'm saying this particularly because I've seen people, they have boyfriends and they got pregnant. Now it is 5-month pregnancy. This really came to me a few months ago. And the boyfriend left her, some fight between them, she went away. Now she wants to abort the child. This is not okay. You cannot go on like this. I think some kind of number of weeks we can fix. In my judgment, I think before 48 days, if it happens, it's best. But sometimes a woman may not be able to know that she is pregnant. Let us allow 10 weeks, 12 weeks, maybe 14 weeks. You can't go to 25 weeks, 30 weeks and try to terminate a child. It's not nice. Because it's alive, it's a living life. You must understand, of all the creatures on this planet, a fetus as a life is the most helpless life. Yes? Even a little child, a 2-year-old child, if you try to do harm to him, he will bite, he will do fight, he has some defense. A fetus is totally in your mercy. You must treat it with utmost compassion. Because of your convenience, you can't do whatever you want. At the same time, does somebody else decide this? No. A woman should decide this, there's no question about that.
I'll push back a little bit here. And this is the thing that a lot of kind of men are pushing back in the United States, because it takes two to tango. Let me put it that way. And some women, just because to get so upset at their man that, and their man say, you know, just sorry about the coffee, I need to stop. Then their man wants to keep the child, and the woman doesn't. And so you're saying, well, it's a woman's right. Well, what about the men's rights? You know, does a man have a right? It still takes two to tango, like I said. It takes two people to create a child. It is both their responsibility. It's not just the woman's per se. But at the same time, I know the argument is that the man's not caring for the child for the 9 months. You're absolutely right, but the man is supposed to be taking care of that wife for those entire period while she's, you know, making the baby, I guess. But yeah, I mean, it's not like it's just a one person doing it. It's a team effort. Well, it's really weird to say that too. But again, if it's and women will do this out of spite, and even in the United States, where even if the child is born and the mother wants to give it up to adoption, man doesn't really have an option to take the child. I think some laws are changing for the better, where the man can adopt his own child, which is really weird and really screwed up. Like, I don't know. There's a lot of laws and a lot of issues for sure that needs to be worked out. And it's hopefully changing for the better. It's could you imagine that you love this person, and then you're having a child together, and you're looking forward, and you want to be a happy father or well, father is the only way I can really put this, because it's the only way it's happening. Then all of a sudden the mother decides, you know what, I don't like you anymore, I'm gonna the baby. The father has no choice. Father wants the baby? Nope, nothing. So, to me, that seems unfair, but at the same time, I understand he's not carrying a child. But where can we draw a line to say where, again, maybe this line that's being drawn where you cannot longer do that is the line that can be drawn to where if the father says, you know what, you may not want the baby, but I do. But even then, there are courts out there who won't give the babies to the father. Again, I think things are changing. I think they're changing for the better. I think family court is becoming more fair, because right now I think it's overwhelmingly, I guess, how do I say, women-sided? Like, women, essentially, how do I say this? At least as far as I've heard, it seems to be true that family court favors women a lot. So I just leave it at that.
But at the same time, some kind of norm has to be there, that within this much time it must happen. After the child has grown, there is substantial studies saying the child has even emotion towards the mother. You don't kill a life which has emotion, isn't it? That amounts for something else. So I think both the sides take extreme positions, this is the problem. Let's take a more humane and practical position. Why are you for or against something? It is a question of life, isn't it? How do we handle this life? With what due respect do I handle this life? It's been happening, it's yesterday or day before, there is some information saying the male-female proportion in the country has improved, congratulations. But at the same time, why was it down? Female children who are born after… because they didn't go for sonogram, this, that, they're born and they're girls. Simple thing, what's being done in the villages is, they just take some paddy granules and put it in the mouth. It gets stuck somewhere and the child dies in a terrible way, just because it's a female. So now, if I can terminate a child at 5–6 months, why not after 10 months when the child has come out? I'm saying the logic will extend itself, you must be careful about taking up causes, because what is the consequence of what we do today, tomorrow? To what extremes will people take it? This must be taken into account, because what I'm saying is not a rarity. How many thousands must have been killed? Only a few are caught. Hello? Only a few are caught, thousands have been killed. Because a 5-day-old child, if it dies, people will, think something happened to the child. Infant mortality is there. How much of this infant mortality is actually murder, nobody knows, okay? So we must be careful what we argue for. This is not about this versus that. A more humane way of handling life is definitely needed, isn't it?
Well, I'm glad… I'm glad I came up with the same conclusion as Sadhguru there. This is the reason why I want to say what I have to say first, again, because I can go back, it's like, oh, good thing Sadhguru said that, now I'll use that as my explanation. I genuinely want to test out my own beliefs and see if they're sound or not. And again, a little bit of pushback on certain things, but again, Sadhguru doesn't live in the United States, and I don't know if he studies up on certain things, and again, obviously me, I hear things. I don't know if it's 100% true, but I know there is some truth to it. It's not to say that it's absolute, but perhaps it happens more one way than another. So I was hoping to get 30 minutes through this, and I've already been almost recording for an hour. I have spoken as much as this video has been played, actually more. Oh my gosh. Alright, well, I'm gonna pause the video right here. I did not think I would have too much to say, but good lord, do I have a lot to say. So anyways, this is my reaction to at least part 1 of Prathima, Insitute of Medical Science. If you like my content, please consider subscribing. Thumbs up, thumbs down below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next vid.